This week we are learning about ecosystems. And I'm going to be explaining what an ecosystem is. At the end of the week, you'll be able to explain it to me. You'll be able to explain it to your family. We're going to think about what an environment is. All of the things around us make up our environment, and that includes living things and non-living things. Now, when a thing is living, it has a special name. We can say that it is an organism. So living things are organisms. In order to be defined as an organism, a living thing does 5 things. It gets energy from food. Same as you. You are a living organism and you get energy from food. A living thing can grow and develop. Do people grow and develop? Yes, they were babies, and then they grow up, and then they become adults. They become older. Living things get rid of waste. That means that they go to the bathroom. You got to think, if they're eating to get energy, then the food goes through them, and that is called waste. Living things respond to their environment. The environment helps them to stay alive. So they can respond in a good way if it's a good environment. Maybe the sunlight is just enough to help them live. There are things in the environment that they need to stay alive, so they respond. And then finally, living things reproduce. That means they make more. So if you have a cat, maybe it reproduces and it has kittens. So reproduce means to make more of the same kind. So these are the 5 things that living organisms, those are the functions, the basic life functions that they carry out. Let's think right now about things that are living and things that are non-living. So, people. Well, people, yes, they get energy from food. People grow and develop. People get rid of waste. People respond to the environment, and people can reproduce. So people are living organisms. Animals. Animals are living things. They get energy from food. If they didn't eat, they would not have energy. They would not feel like moving around. They would be very hungry. So they get energy from the food that they eat. They grow and they develop. They're babies, and then they get big. They get bigger. They get rid of waste. They go to the bathroom. They respond to their environment, and they reproduce. What about plants? Well, plants get energy from food. They grow and they develop, get rid of waste, respond to the environment, and reproduce. Insects get energy from food. They grow and develop. They get rid of waste. They respond to the environment. They reproduce. So those are the living things. What are some non-living things? That would be something like water. Water does not grow and develop. Water does not get rid of waste. Water does not respond to the environment or reproduce. So water is a non-living thing. Sunlight, also non-living. Soil, the dirt that you see in the yard, that is not something that's eating. It's not something that's getting rid of waste. It's not growing and developing. So soil is non-living. The oxygen and the air, these are all non-living things that we would find in the environment. So living and non-living in the environment, these things interact with each other. And when these things interact with each other, the living and the non-living, say people who find water to drink, and animals and plants that need water, we all need the sunlight and oxygen and air. When living things interact with each other, the living and non-living things, they're interacting in the environment. These things make up an ecosystem. So that is our word. And that's the definition that we want to know, that an ecosystem is living and non-living things that interact in the environment. So these are all important words. These are important terms for you to know. An ecosystem is made up of living and non-living things that interact in an environment. Now, I want to think about an ecosystem, and I want to think about a place where I might find an ecosystem. So I'm going to think about some different environments, and I'm going to think about whether there's an ecosystem there, okay? So first, I'm going to think about mountains. What about this environment in the mountains? Do you think that there are ecosystems, living and non-living things interacting in the environment, in the mountains? Yes. Look at all of these animals, and they're next to the water. Maybe the bears are going to eat some fish out of the water. Maybe the fish will eat worms before the bear gets them. All of these things are interacting in the environment. And so, yes, in the mountains, we can find ecosystems. Okay, what about the rainforest? What about the environment of rainforest? Do you think that we could find ecosystems in a rainforest? The answer is yes. Look at all of these animals and birds, and they're living around the trees. They're finding little plants. Maybe they're eating plants. Maybe they're eating bugs off from the plants. The plants are helping. Yes, there is an ecosystem and many little ecosystems in a rainforest. There are living and non-living things that interact with each other. Okay, what about the ocean? What about this? Do you think that we could find an ecosystem in the ocean? Well, yes, we can. In the ocean, We might be able to find some seaweed. We would find fish, small fish. We would find larger fish that maybe eat the smaller fish or that maybe help the smaller fish. All of these things, the living, the fish, the non-living, the water, they're all interacting in the environment. They're interacting with each other. And so yes, in an ocean you can find ecosystems. Let's look at something that's a little drier, like the desert. What do you think? In the desert, do you think you could find an ecosystem there? You can. Look at how dry it is. But look, there are animals in the desert. Some of them are above ground, some of them are underground. I see some of them, these little worms, interacting with the soil. I see a bird that got a mouse. I see a bird over here that's going to get a plant. These animals are interacting with the environment and with each other. So yes, we can find an ecosystem in the desert. How about in the Arctic? Do you think that in the Arctic, it's so cold there, do you think we could find an ecosystem there? The answer is yes. We can even find animals in the cold, cold Arctic. Look at this. There's some bugs there. I see that an animal has died, and so the bugs are going to eat it. They're interacting in the environment. So the animals are interacting with each other and in the environment. So yes, we can find ecosystems in the Arctic. I see there are some animals burrow under the snow, and some other animals will go into the water. They're all interacting with their environment. Okay, I have a question. What about a puddle in your backyard? What about a rain puddle? Do you think that there's an ecosystem in a rain puddle? The answer is yes. There are probably little gnats and there are probably little bugs around there. And there may even be little tiny pieces of bacteria, and that bacteria is so small that you can only see it with a microscope. But it's still there. So there are some living things that are so small that you would need a very powerful microscope to be able to see them. But they're still there, and they're alive. And so, yes, you can find an ecosystem in a puddle, just a regular rain puddle. So this is our lesson for this week. And the main idea that we need to know is that living things depend on non-living things. We all depend on water. Water is not alive. Water is a non-living thing. And we depend on it. So this is an important point, that living things depend on non-living things. And living things and non-living things make up an ecosystem. They interact together. One last thing, when you are all done with this lesson for the week, you're going to have a test that looks a little bit like this. And this will be your science grade for this week. So it's going to be important that you watch this video several times so you can get a good grade and you can understand all of the ideas on this lesson. And that's why we're going to have a couple different interpreters interpret it. And so you'll get to see some different faces, but it's the same information. You're going to need to know that an organism is a living thing. You're going to need to know the 5 basic functions that living things carry out. So you're going to need to know that they get energy from food, they grow and develop, they get rid of waste, they respond to their environment, and they reproduce. And then you're going to need to know that an ecosystem is living and non-living things that interact in an environment. You will have a word bank, so this will help you out. But you'll need to watch the video several times because you want to make sure you know it. Also, when we meet during the week, the interpreters will test you on some of these things to make sure that you don't have any questions. All right, thank you for listening.